It's that's difficult. Like it becomes not an issue of like what side of you stand on certain things. It's like it's what's your priority kind of issue. I think is what comes down to leading people to vote Conservative, even though they care about the NHS. They don't see it as like being under threat or as like as big a priority as, I don't know, like shutting down the woke people or whatever it is. But you mentioned you are not a big fan of Kier Starmer and his current
New
I don't know.
management, as he calls
Yeah,
it.
the
Yeah.
management, the campaign to abandon all of his original promises. That he's actually doing a pretty good job in managing to just like forget all of them, I think. But like, do you see some of the sort of more left wing momentumy Jeremy Corbyn side of Labour breaking off and forming a new party? Because this is something I've been looking at recently, and like whether we're going to get like another or maybe two or three sort of parties that will spring up between now and the next election.
I don't think it will happen in the sense that, I mean, the famous phrase is the Labour Party is a broad church, and that has been the case for decades. I think.
I mean, like, there's a broad church, and then there's agreeing with everything the Tories say. There's like,
I mean, that's what frustrates me is, and I know I'm increasingly seeing. Sorry, you got then. I'm increasingly seeing people are leaving the Labour Party because they're just so disenchanted. I mean, I've been a member throughout, I say, right back to the 80s, and I stayed loyal to the party when Blair was leader. I mean, I stopped being active, but I still believed in the Labour Party, even though I didn't believe in the current leadership. I mean, I was suspended from the Labour Party in 2016. About 10,000 people were suspended during the Jeremy Corbyn's second leadership election, because of comments on social media. And basically people, the anti-Corbyn faction at Party HQ, just trawled social media, and basically anybody who retweeted particular tweets they didn't like got suspended for bringing the party into disrepute. In fact, the evidence they sent me, it wasn't any comments I'd made myself, it was 2 retweets, and the evidence they sent to me showed I hadn't even retweeted them. And I battled with them for what, and it was a nightmare. And then we all miraculously got, well, nearly all of us got unsuspended about a month after the leadership election. And there was talk, I mean, it might sound like a crazy conspiracy theory, but I mean, I don't know if you have heard about the Labour Leaks report that came out when
I spoke to Rory O'Donnell, who was a staffer in Corbyn's, I don't know if I would say inner circle, but he ran the battle bus in 2019. So he's a friend of mine. I used to work with him. So yeah, I'm aware of the leaks report.
So I mean, the thing, so that report came out back in April, about the time Kier Starmer became leader, and it was showing there was actually a unit within Labour Party HQ at the 2017 general election, which was actually putting funding towards what were called the moderate Labour MPs, the anti-Corbyn ones, the people who'd been part of the attempt in the PLP to bring him down. And arguably, we came quite close. We moved the Tories majority. If we had a more focused campaign, we could arguably have won the election, which is causing a lot of argument. So yes, I mean, I saw, just before we started talking, I saw on Twitter, Angela Rayner was asked this morning about the NHS pay rise, and she said, "Oh well, we went Labour offered 5% last election, but we lost, so we're not committing to a figure now." And I mean, the Green Party's recently come out; they support the 15% pay rise. It really is quite demotivating.
What would 15%?
I just don't. Sorry, again.
What would 15% be for like a minimum wage person? That would be what, up to about 10 or 11 pounds an hour, something like that.
I think. Yeah, sorry, I hadn't thought in terms of per hour, but
No, it was just popped in my
Yeah.
head. Like, what would
Yeah.
you be earning generally? Well, like, what would be the minimum wage?
I mean, nearly every. I don't think there's many people in the NHS on minimum wage. I think it's above minimum wage, the bottom scales. But then alongside that, people working in care work, a lot of people in care work are on minimum wage, which does get overlooked.
Quite
But
often they're on a lot less than minimum wage because they're the time to fill their
I know, because
appointments doesn't add up to the amount.
That's the problem. Yeah, the private care companies will only pay you literally for the hours you're with that. The local authority care will actually pay you. You'll get a shift and you'll do so many hours and you'll get paid for the travel time between. But yeah, so I mean, it's just the lack of ambition that let's say just mention Angela Rayner because she's been on the telly this morning. The lack of ambition, the lack of Keir Starmer. It's this. I think it's the idea is that Jeremy Corbyn was presented by the media as being dreadfully extreme, far too radical. But a lot of the policies that Labour were advocating in the two general elections he led us into were pretty much mainstream social democratic policies across a lot of Scandinavia, across a lot of Europe, and it's the idea that we should have a fully funded public NHS, that we should start to think about taking some of the utilities back into public ownership. It wasn't dangerously radical. It was just the sort of stuff that decades ago people just did. It was mainstream politics back in the 70s. So I feel that Keir Starmer and his team are trying to make Labour appear moderate, and I've heard them say, we need to be a critical friend of the government during the pandemic. No, you should be jumping up and down every day, pointing to all the corruption, and the failures, and the massive scale of the death toll. And I'll always stay loyal to Labour because I just feel like, to come to your question about will there be a split, I don't think there will be because there hasn't been one in the past. And you see people like Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell, and there's the Socialist Campaign Group within the Parliamentary Labour Party. They've got about 25 MPs who are the sort of the strong left-wing group. They're all staying loyal because I don't think in the space of 3.5 years till the next general election, it sounds an attractive proposition. We'll have a radical socialist party that will be a clear alternative to the Tories, but I just don't think that you can achieve that and win a general election. I think the battle has to be for radical socialists to hopefully keep arguing their case within the Labour Party. And hopefully some of the policies and not just the policies, but like you said, the general thrust of the image the Labour Party is putting across, it just needs to be more radical and a lot more challenging to the government. And the problem is, like, I know we shouldn't believe opinion polls because we shouldn't, but it's the Conservatives just keep on being ahead of Labour in the opinion polls, despite the scale of the pandemic, despite so many things that are happening, despite the fact that the Brexit, and I probably don't want to get into the audience exactly Brexit, but however, whatever you felt about Brexit, for or against it, the promises they've made, and I used to have a litany. I said, people said, Brexit. I said, well, the Tories said, if you vote yes in the referendum, we'll trigger Article 50, and within 2 years we will we'll have a trade deal. We won't be paying a divorce payment. We'll leave the single market. We'll leave the customs union. We'll have loads of wonderful new trade deals around the world. We'll have £350 million a week extra that we'll spend on the NHS. And it took, nearly 5 years on for the referendum. We've only recently left a transition period. So the many things they promised, some of them didn't happen, and those that did happen took a lot longer to happen than They said they would, and increasingly, again, I mean, just obviously you're in Northern Ireland. Just the simple mechanics of trade between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, because of they had the backstop, which, I mean, it seemed to me an eminently sensible solution, in terms of where we are, but they were opposed to this, so they created a slightly different scenario that Boris Johnson could say, I've negotiated a better deal than Theresa May, and well, the reality of it isn't working, and there's already figures coming out showing sort of like, both in terms of the GBNI trade blockages, and also that some of the exports from Britain to continental Europe are slowing. So
Yeah.
I feel the thing that frustrates me is, I feel that I watch, obviously I get a lot of my news from Twitter and social media and generally in the independent media, and then I turn on the BBC and ITV News, and it's like, the thing that frustrates me is it's portrayed that I feel the Johnson government is really dangerous and really extreme and really both simultaneously incompetent in many ways, but dangerously following a very nasty, nationalistic, selfish agenda. And people in the media, it's like the sanitized. It's like, they prorogued Parliament. They tried to close Parliament down for 5 weeks to stop scrutiny of Brexit. And it's not a normal government. To me, I mean, I'm really interested in political history. I think we are in a situation where the last time we had a government this incompetent and dangerous, we're going back to sort of the Baldwin Chamberlain era of the 30s, when they were appeasing fascism, and we had mass unemployment, and we ended up with a war that we weren't prepared for. I just think
everything turned all right.
Say again, sorry?
Everything turned out all right there.
Well, it took 6 years to win the war, didn't it? Which we should have, I hope you're not being too serious about that. But the thing is, I just do really feel that it's almost like Johnson has seen what Trump has done. And it used to be, the thing is, politicians would tell lies, but they couldn't lie day after day about major things where there was evidence to show they were lying, and get away with it. And it's like I said, because of the prorogation of Parliament, because in the latter part of Theresa May being Prime Minister, the government was actually in contempt of Parliament for refusing to release documentation they were told to release about the Brexit deal, because Dominic Cummings wouldn't answer questions about the funding of the Brexit referendum and was in contempt of Parliament, was still allowed to be the Prime Minister's chief advisor. And then he broke lockdown. It wasn't until 6 months later he upset Boris Johnson's partner, then he had to go. But it's almost as though no government minister, I mean, Priti Patel was accused of breaking the ministerial code by bullying civil servants. Boris Johnson just said, no, I've made the judgment. The independent report says she broke the code, but I've made the judgment she didn't. Matt Hancock, as I said earlier, broke the law. Johnson repeatedly lies to Parliament. None of these people resign. I remember, like, the Thatcher and Major era, loads of government ministers had to resign during John Major's cataclysmic time in office because of sleaze and scandal and incompetence. But it just doesn't happen anymore. They're just not being held to sort of accountable standards that we expect.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, follow me on Twitter, or sign up to our mailing list. Thanks a lot to our sponsor, ExpressVPN, the #1 most trusted VPN. Get lightning fast connectivity with servers in 160 locations across 94 countries. Keep your browsing privacy safe with ExpressVPN and get a 35% discount on 12 months of ExpressVPN when you follow the link in the description below. Don't forget, my book is now out and available to order on Amazon and on bookshop.org. That's Brexit, the Establishment Civil War. And most importantly, thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.